Welcome to a Telltale Books video. I'm Greg, here at my house in Sheboygan again. You're going to see me with this background and this shirt for a whole bunch of videos because I'm going to shoot like 5 or 6 all in a row right now. And the first one that I'm shooting in this group is the next one, number 3, in my series of Fritz Leiber complete reads. This is a story. This is one of those stories. He wrote 6 of them for a religious publication in 1934 to 1935. And this one's called After the Darkness. After the Darkness was first published in a magazine called The Churchman, which I believe was like a college publication, but it was for a seminary that Leiber had attended before he went back to University of Chicago and then started his writing career. So he wanted to be a priest, I guess, and went to the seminary. But when he realized it really wasn't for him, he dropped out. But he said to the people at the seminary that he wanted to become a writer instead, and so they did invite him to submit stories. So that's where he published his very first 6 stories, is in their publication titled The Churchman, in starting December 1934 and going through 1935. So this is the third one, called After the Darkness. It's a very short, very simple, it's a very short story. You might even call it flash fiction. All of these earliest stories, you might call them flash fiction. They're that short. And it's a very simple story. It's about Christ dying on the cross and returning to earth after his death, being resurrected. And the whole thing is being witnessed by a young homeless boy. And so the story is kind of told from the angle, not first person from the boy, but from the angle of this boy's experience seeing this and having been taken in by a couple of the apostles before Christ was put on the cross. He was working for them, and they were helping him because he was homeless otherwise. So a very Christian story, very simple story, not any surprises to it really, except for the device of retelling this story from the point of view of this young boy. So if you are Christian, if you are religious, you'll probably like this story. Otherwise, I think you really need to be a Fritz Leiber completist to bother with it. I have all 6 of those first stories in this book. It's called Strange Wonders, a collection of rare Fritz Leiber works, edited by Benjamin Shumisky. I think that's how you pronounce it. Published by Subterranean Press a few years ago. It is not currently in print, but it was pretty easy to get a hold of on the used market, and not all that expensive either. So if you're a diehard Leiber fan, you might want to search this out because it's got a lot of his poetry, a lot of fragments of other stories, some essays. So far it's an interesting book. It really gives you a glimpse into more than just his fiction, if you know what I mean. A little more of what made him the writer he was, which is what this whole series is all about. All of these authors that I'm doing these deep dives, I want to dig deeper into these writers and be able to see how they developed and learn a bit more about why they did what they did. Everybody has a unique story, and I'm kind of finding these stories out and getting more perspective on the authors that I think will make their later, better works a lot more enjoyable. But a lot of these early works are very simple and not something I would normally read, so I'm trying to get through these quickly. That's why I'm doing so many at this time. I don't want to linger too long on all these very earliest, more amateurish kind of works. Although I have found some surprises with some of the authors. Most of them, I'm getting pretty much what I expect. They're an amateur. The Leiber, so far, his writing is better than the other writers that started out in the 1930s. Even though he was just as young, he seems to be a better writer all around. Better character, better story, more interesting, more depth. Not utilizing stock, standard characters and situations to carry his ideas, but rather being more original in what he has to say with his stories, which I think makes him a stronger writer than some of the others I've been reading lately, like Nat Shackner or the early Manly Wade Wellman, the early Jack Vance. There I'm seeing a lot of, and I recently read a work by Eric Frank Russell, The Saga of Pelican West. These were all standard space operas with very standard plots and standard characters. Nothing surprising in the stories, even though they're enjoyable. You know, after you've read a few of them, you start to see that you're really just reading the same story with different aliens and different super science. You don't even get different characters. And that makes them less than the best. They're definitely not great literature. But with Fritz Leiber, I wouldn't call this great literature. I won't call it a top tale, but I will say it's better than the other 1930s authors that I've been reading first works by so far. So Leiber is pretty strong right out of the gate here. And of course, he's not writing science fiction or fantasy. Well, this one, he has some fantastic elements to it. If you're not religious, you can view it as fantasy. But if you're religious, you believe that this stuff is truth. So Leiber probably did believe it also. And he wrote a very good story, very nice little story. So that's number 3, After the Darkness. I've got 3 more of these early religious stories to get through. And the next one will be Children of Jerusalem, which, again, is going to be a very religious piece. But that'll be number 4, and that'll be coming up soon. I hope you'll like this video. Hit the subscribe button. Come on back for more. Maybe you're going to wait for later Leiber, but I think it's worth it to hear about these stories at least, even if you never track them down and read them. It does, like I say, it does illuminate more of what he would do later on and makes it kind of interesting to know that there are these background things that would influence his later writing. So I think it's at least worth it to come and listen to me talk about these things, even if you don't seek them out and read them. So I'm going to be here doing all of them, whether you like it or not. And I hope you'll join me.